Have you ever wondered if achieving enlightenment requires sitting for hours in meditation, following strict rituals, or living a life of extreme discipline? What if I told you that the path to spiritual awakening is much simpler, more accessible, and can be found right here in your everyday life? Imagine being able to experience true peace, wisdom, and clarity without retreating to a mountain monastery or spending days in isolation. What if I told you that the key to unlocking your own Buddha nature lies not in distant rituals or complex practices, but in the moments you often overlook? Every single moment, whether you're walking down the street, eating your lunch, or having a conversation with a friend, holds the potential for profound spiritual insight. In today's video, we're diving into one of the Buddha's most powerful and often overlooked teachings, the secret to seeing the Buddha nature in your everyday life. This isn't about spending hours on a meditation cushion or following a strict spiritual routine. It's about awakening to the profound truth that enlightenment is already inside you. Yes, you heard that right. You don't need to look far for the key to awakening. It's right here, right now, in the present moment. But here's the twist: this path doesn't require you to change your entire life or leave your responsibilities behind. What if I told you that in the simplest of actions, from brushing your teeth to having a conversation, you could discover the deep wisdom of the Buddha? Stay tuned as we explore how you can integrate mindfulness into every part of your day and unlock the potential for enlightenment that lies within you. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more valuable content like this to you. And if you want to show extra love, consider hitting that super thanks button below to support the channel even further. Let's start this enlightening journey together. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll look at your daily life in a completely new way. The path to enlightenment, or achieving a true understanding of oneself and the universe, is often seen as a long and arduous journey, especially in the traditions of Buddhism. For many, this path is defined by rituals such as meditation, chanting, and long hours of introspection. But what if I told you that enlightenment does not necessarily require you to sit in silent meditation for hours on end or chant sacred verses every day? What if the very essence of spiritual awakening could be accessed through the simplest moments of your daily life? This is the secret that the Buddha himself revealed. Enlightenment is not a distant goal, but rather something accessible right now, in the present moment, without the need for complex rituals. It's a concept known as seeing the Buddha nature in everyday life, a principle that transcends the idea of meditating for long hours or repeating mantras. At first glance, this idea may seem counterintuitive. After all, many teachings and practices in Buddhism emphasize the importance of meditation, the stilling of the mind, and the repeating of mantras to cultivate mindfulness and spiritual awareness. Yet, the Buddha's teachings also suggest that true understanding of oneself and the world can be found in the very fabric of everyday life. The Buddha didn't require his followers to be hermits or monks to reach enlightenment. Instead, he taught that one could see the Buddha nature in every aspect of existence, even in the mundane. One key teaching of the Buddha that aligns with this idea is the notion of right view. According to the Buddha, enlightenment starts with a shift in perception, seeing the world not as it appears on the surface, but as it truly is. This shift doesn't require us to leave the world behind or retreat into solitude. In fact, the Buddha taught that it is through engaging with the world, not avoiding it, that we come to understand its true nature. This process can be understood as mindfulness, not just as a practice of meditation, but as a way of living, of being fully present and aware in every action, thought, and interaction. For many people, the idea of cultivating mindfulness in everyday life may seem challenging. After all, modern life is often filled with distractions, noise, and busyness. However, what the Buddha teaches is that these very distractions can become opportunities for mindfulness. Rather than seeing distractions as obstacles to meditation. The Buddha encouraged his followers to use them as tools for developing awareness. For example, when we're caught up in the rush of daily activities, whether it's answering emails, working on projects, or dealing with traffic, we have an opportunity to practice mindfulness. In each of these moments, we can pause, take a deep breath, and bring our full attention to the task at hand. By doing so, we can begin to see the impermanence and interconnectedness of all things, key insights that are central to Buddhist teachings. Consider the example of someone who works in a fast-paced office environment. The constant flow of emails, meetings, and deadlines might seem overwhelming, but it can also be an opportunity for mindfulness. Instead of getting caught up in the stress of work, that person could take a moment to pause, breathe, and approach each task with clarity and focus. This practice of mindfulness is not separate from the work itself. It becomes the work. The person might notice how their mind reacts to stress, how their body feels in the midst of tension, and how their thoughts come and go. These simple moments of awareness are the very essence of seeing the Buddha nature in action. By cultivating mindfulness, that person is not only becoming more effective in their work, but is also walking the path of enlightenment, one small step at a time. Another example comes from the world of parenting. For parents, particularly those with young children, life can often feel overwhelming. There are constant demands on time and energy, from managing schoolwork and extracurricular activities to handling the everyday responsibilities of raising a family. Yet, these moments of chaos can also become opportunities for mindfulness. A parent can practice being present with their child, truly listening to them, paying attention to their needs, and responding with patience and compassion. These small, everyday interactions can be seen as an extension of the Buddhist practice of mindfulness. Through this, a parent can cultivate a deeper understanding of the impermanence of life, the interconnectedness of all beings, and the importance of living with intention and awareness. This concept of seeing the Buddha nature in daily life is also closely tied to the practice of right action, acting in ways that are in harmony with the principles of compassion, non-harm, and wisdom. Right action doesn't require us to engage in grand, heroic deeds. Instead, it asks us to act thoughtfully and consciously in every situation, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. For example, when we're in a store and the cashier gives us the wrong change, we have the choice to react with frustration or with kindness. Choosing kindness and patience, even in the face of small injustice, is an example of right action in practice. It's through these everyday choices that we begin to embody the Buddha nature. In addition to mindfulness and right action, another core teaching of Buddhism that aligns with this idea is the concept of emptiness. Emptiness refers to the idea that all things are interconnected and interdependent, and that nothing exists independently or permanently. This understanding of emptiness can be applied to our daily lives, helping us to see things as they truly are, not as solid, unchanging objects, but as fleeting moments, constantly changing and evolving. By practicing mindfulness and understanding emptiness, we can begin to let go of our attachment to things, people, and outcomes, recognizing that all things are temporary and interconnected. This realization can be profoundly liberating, as it frees us from the mental and emotional suffering that arises from clinging to things that are fleeting. For instance, consider the way we often approach relationships. We might hold on to the idea that certain relationships are permanent, or that we must always act a certain way in order to keep others happy. However, when we practice mindfulness and see things through the lens of emptiness, we begin to understand that all relationships are dynamic and constantly changing. This understanding can help us to let go of expectations and attachments, allowing us to engage with others in a more compassionate and open-hearted way. Ultimately, the Buddha's teachings about seeing the Buddha nature in everyday life challenge us to reconsider our preconceived notions about what it means to live a spiritual life. Spirituality is often thought of as something that requires us to escape from the world, to retreat into silence and solitude. But the Buddha's teachings suggest that true spiritual awakening is not about leaving the world behind, it's about fully engaging with it, being present in every moment, and recognizing the sacredness of each experience. This doesn't mean that we should avoid practices like meditation or chanting. Rather, it means that we should bring the essence of these practices into our daily lives. Whether we are meditating, working, or simply interacting with others, we have the opportunity to see the Buddha nature in everything around us. In conclusion, the Buddha's teachings about seeing the Buddha nature in everyday life offer a powerful reminder that enlightenment is not a distant goal to be achieved after years of effort and practice. It is something that is available to us right now, in the present moment, through mindfulness and awareness. By cultivating mindfulness in our daily lives, we can begin to see the world through the eyes of compassion, wisdom, and interconnectedness. This is the path to true spiritual awakening, a path that doesn't require us to leave the world behind, but to fully embrace it with all of its beauty and challenges. Through this practice, we can begin to experience the true nature of who we are and the interconnectedness of all things. And in doing so, we can walk the path of the Buddha one small step at a time. Buddhism is often associated with complex rituals, deep meditation, and hours of quiet reflection. Many people believe that attaining enlightenment requires strict discipline, including sitting in silence for hours, chanting mantras, and withdrawing from the distractions of everyday life. However, the Buddha's teachings reveal a more accessible path to awakening, one that doesn't demand extreme discipline or an abandonment of the world. In fact, the Buddha taught that enlightenment is not some far-off goal or distant achievement, but something that can be realized in the very moments of our ordinary lives. This realization depends on practicing mindfulness and recognizing our true nature, which is always available to us in the present moment. In his teachings, the Buddha emphasized the importance of living with awareness in every moment. The idea that we must meditate for long periods or follow rigid practices is not central to the essence of his teachings. Instead, the Buddha highlighted that enlightenment can be found in the simplicity of everyday experiences. You don't have to retreat from the world to discover your true nature. In fact, it is in engaging fully with the world without attachment that we can realize our own Buddha nature. Consider the act of eating, something most people do every day without much thought. When we eat, we can either be completely unaware of the process, distracted by our thoughts, or we can be fully present with the experience, feeling the textures of the food, tasting each bite, and noticing how the food nourishes our body. By simply being present with the act of eating, we engage in a form of mindfulness, where we are aware of the present moment and the interconnectedness of our actions. The Buddha taught that in these small, everyday moments, we can cultivate awareness and move closer to enlightenment. It is not about creating a separate space for spiritual practice, but integrating mindfulness into every action we perform. This teaching fundamentally changes how we view the pursuit of enlightenment. Many people think of spiritual growth as something that requires extraordinary effort, something only achievable by monks or those who withdraw from society. But the Buddha's message was that enlightenment is within reach for everyone. Whether we are walking, talking, working, or even cleaning the dishes, we have the opportunity to practice mindfulness and see the true nature of reality. The key is to shift our attention away from the distractions of our thoughts and external circumstances and focus on being present in the here and now. This approach can be seen as a radical departure from the traditional view that enlightenment requires isolation or renunciation. The Buddha was clear that spiritual growth does not demand that we separate ourselves from society or our daily responsibilities. In fact, engaging with the world mindfully is precisely where enlightenment can be realized. The Buddha's teachings were not about escaping from life, but about fully participating in it, with an open and aware mind. To illustrate this point, Let's take the example of a busy professional in a corporate job. Many people in high-stress environments feel overwhelmed and disconnected from themselves. They might think that in order to find peace or enlightenment, they need to leave their job, take a long vacation, or undergo some sort of retreat. But the Buddha would suggest that they can find peace and clarity even within the chaos of their work. How? By practicing mindfulness. Instead of rushing through tasks or reacting impulsively to challenges, the Buddha would encourage this person to pause, take a deep breath, and bring their attention to the present moment. By doing so, they can find stillness and clarity even in the most demanding situations. For instance, consider a manager dealing with an angry client. Instead of reacting with frustration or defensiveness, the manager can take a moment to pause and recognize the emotions arising in the body. This pause, this moment of mindfulness, can help the manager respond with calmness and compassion. By being aware of their own reactions, they are better able to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This is not just a practical approach to handling stress. It's a form of spiritual practice. In this moment, the manager is practicing right action, responding with wisdom and compassion rather than reacting from a place of anger or fear. The same principle applies to personal relationships. Often, we find ourselves caught up in misunderstandings or conflicts with those close to us. We might feel hurt, angry, or frustrated, and our natural instinct is to react impulsively. However, the Buddha taught that by practicing mindfulness in these moments, we can gain insight into the nature of our feelings and respond with greater wisdom. For example, when we feel triggered by a partner's comment, instead of immediately reacting, we can take a moment to reflect. We can ask ourselves, what is the root of this emotion? Why am I feeling this way? By doing so, we begin to see that our emotions are not fixed or permanent, but rather arise and pass away like waves in the ocean. This realization helps us to detach from our emotional reactions and respond with a clearer mind. Mindfulness doesn't require us to be perfect or always remain calm in every situation. Instead, it's about recognizing our tendencies and choosing to respond with greater awareness. Even when we make mistakes or react in ways we later regret, mindfulness allows us to learn from those moments. We can reflect on our actions and cultivate a deeper understanding of ourselves. This is the heart of the Buddha's teachings. To be fully aware in every moment and recognize that enlightenment is not about attaining something far off, but about realizing what is already within us. The Buddha's teachings are often described as the middle way, the path of moderation between extremes. This idea is particularly relevant when it comes to the practice of mindfulness. It's not about forcing ourselves to be perfectly calm or serene at all times, nor is it about abandoning our responsibilities or worldly engagements. The middle way suggests that we can live fully engaged lives while also practicing mindfulness. It's about balancing our external activities with an inner awareness of our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Another important aspect of the Buddha's teaching is the concept of impermanence, anicca. Everything in life is constantly changing, and this includes our thoughts, emotions, and experiences. When we fully understand impermanence, we begin to see that nothing is permanent, and this realization helps us detach from attachment and suffering. Mindfulness helps us understand this principle by allowing us to observe how everything comes and goes, our thoughts, feelings, and even the situations we find ourselves in. Nothing lasts forever. And when we recognize this, we are less likely to become attached to things that bring us suffering. Instead, we can appreciate the moment as it is without clinging to it. This approach to mindfulness is particularly powerful because it allows us to respond to life with a sense of freedom and detachment. We're not defined by our circumstances or our emotions. Instead, we are free to respond to life in a way that is aligned with our true nature. By practicing mindfulness in everyday life, we can break free from the cycle of attachment and suffering and move toward a life of greater peace and understanding. One of the most profound aspects of the Buddha's teaching is that enlightenment is not something that is granted to us from the outside. It is not something that we need to seek externally, through rituals or special practices. Instead, enlightenment is something that is already present within us. It is not a distant goal, but a realization of the truth of our own nature. This realization can happen at any time, in any place, as long as we are willing to be present with ourselves and with the world around us. This teaching is especially relevant in the modern world, where many people are constantly searching for meaning or purpose outside of themselves. We look to books, seminars, and spiritual practices for answers. While these tools can be helpful, the Buddha's message reminds us that the true path to enlightenment is not about seeking something new, but about recognizing what is already here. By cultivating mindfulness, we can uncover the wisdom and clarity that is always present within us, waiting to be realized. The Buddha's teachings offer a path that is open to everyone. It is not reserved for monks, nuns, or those who have taken vows of silence. It is a path that can be walked by anyone, in any situation, as long as they are willing to live with awareness. Whether we are in the midst of a busy day, dealing with challenges in our relationships, or simply going about our routine tasks, we have the opportunity to practice mindfulness and realize our true nature. This is the easy path to enlightenment, the path of mindfulness, the path of seeing the Buddha nature in every moment. By following this path, we can transform our everyday lives into a spiritual practice and experience the profound peace and wisdom that the Buddha spoke of. The concept of seeing the Buddha nature, or Banchattan Phat, is a fundamental teaching in Buddhism. It's often misunderstood as something distant, reserved for monks or enlightened beings. However, in reality, the Buddha nature is inherent within each one of us. It is not something we need to seek externally or find through a series of complex rituals or lengthy meditation practices. Rather, it is an innate quality that lies dormant, awaiting our recognition. To truly understand this concept is to understand the essence of our being. Enlightenment is not a far-off goal that can only be attained after years of arduous practice. It is a process of awakening to the reality of who we already are. At the heart of this teaching is the idea that every human being, regardless of their circumstances or past actions, possesses Buddha nature. This nature is not something that is added to us or bestowed upon us from an external source. Instead, it is an inherent aspect of our being, a fundamental quality that is present within all of us from birth. The Buddha described this nature as the potential for wisdom, compassion, and enlightenment that lies within each individual. It's like the seed of a beautiful tree that, when nourished, can grow into its full potential. Understanding that the Buddha nature is not separate from us can be an eye-opening realization. For many people, the idea of enlightenment seems out of reach, something that requires a radical transformation or a journey of intense self-discipline. But the Buddha's teachings suggest that we are not so different from enlightened beings we admire in the scriptures. We all have the capacity to wake up to the truth of our own nature. And it is through understanding and nurturing this nature that we begin the process of spiritual awakening. In Buddhist philosophy, the notion of Buddha nature is tied to the concept of Tathagatagarbha, or the womb of the Tathagata. The Tathagata refers to the Buddha, and the womb refers to the potential for Buddhahood within all beings. This idea suggests that, like a seed containing the potential to grow into a tree, every living being carries within them the potential for enlightenment. The term womb doesn't imply something outside of us, but indicates a seed-like quality that resides within us all, waiting to be realized. One way to think about this concept is to compare it to the process of self-discovery. In life, we often go through phases of growth, learning, and change. We may not always see our true potential, especially in moments of confusion or doubt. But as we go through life and learn from our experiences, we begin to uncover the deeper truths about ourselves. This journey of self-discovery can be seen as a metaphor for realizing our Buddha nature. Just as we uncover layers of our personality and wisdom over time, we can uncover the innate qualities of compassion, wisdom, and mindfulness that are already within us. A common analogy used to explain the Buddha nature is that of a mirror. Imagine that your mind is like a mirror. The mirror's true nature is clear and reflective, yet it can be covered by dust or dirt. When the dust is removed, the mirror reflects perfectly. Similarly, our Buddha nature is like the clarity of the mirror. It is always there, but it can be obscured by the distractions and attachments of daily life. Through mindfulness, meditation, and a shift in perspective, we can clear the dust from our minds and see our true nature clearly. It's important to recognize that the process of awakening to this Buddha nature is not about acquiring something new, but rather about uncovering what is already present. This is a key distinction in Buddhist practice. Many people mistakenly believe that enlightenment is something that must be gained through effort, as if it were a prize or external achievement. But the Buddha's teachings suggest that enlightenment is already within us, and the path to awakening is simply the process of realizing and embodying this truth. It's about understanding that we are already whole and complete, even though we may not always recognize it. One of the most powerful aspects of the concept of Buddha nature is its universality. It is not reserved for a select few or for those who have attained a particular level of spiritual achievement. Buddha nature is inherent in all sentient beings. Whether we are rich or poor, educated or uneducated, spiritual or secular, we all have this same potential for awakening. This universality is what makes Buddhism accessible to all people, regardless of their background or life circumstances. It's a reminder that enlightenment is not about perfection or meeting a set of external criteria. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and the potential we all have for awakening. Another important aspect of Buddha nature is the idea of non-duality. In traditional Buddhist teachings, dualistic thinking, seeing the world in terms of opposites such as good and bad, right and wrong, self and other, leads to suffering. Non-duality, on the other hand, is the recognition that all things are interconnected and interdependent. The Buddha nature within us is not separate from the world around us. It is part of the larger web of life. By seeing the world in terms of interconnectedness and oneness, we can begin to move beyond the limitations of dualistic thinking and experience the world in its true, unified form. To put this into a more practical context, consider a moment when we experience conflict or disagreement with another person. Often, our reaction is to view the other person as separate from us, as an opponent or someone we need to win against. However, when we practice mindfulness and recognize our interconnectedness, we can begin to approach the situation with more compassion and understanding. We realize that the person we are in conflict with is also a human being with their own struggles, fears, and desires. By seeing them through the lens of non-duality, we can respond to them with greater empathy and a deeper sense of connection. The recognition of Buddha nature also encourages us to move beyond the concept of self as a fixed and unchanging entity. In our everyday lives, we tend to view ourselves as separate individuals with distinct identities, beliefs, and preferences. But the teachings of Buddhism suggest that this self is an illusion, a temporary construct that is constantly changing. Our true nature, which is the Buddha nature, transcends the ego and the limited sense of self. This understanding helps us to loosen our attachment to our personal identity and embrace a more expansive and interconnected view of existence. It's also worth noting that the realization of Buddha nature is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. It is something that we continually uncover through practice and awareness. The more we engage with the teachings of Buddhism, the more we begin to see our Buddha nature in everyday life. This doesn't mean that we will suddenly become perfect or free from all suffering. Rather, it means that we begin to live with greater awareness and compassion. and in doing so, we embody our true nature more fully. For example, consider someone who has spent many years in a demanding career, focused on achieving success and accumulating wealth. At a certain point, they may begin to question whether this pursuit has brought them true happiness. As they reflect on their life, they may come to realize that their true nature, what brings them peace and contentment, is not found in external achievements, but in their ability to connect with others, to be present in the moment, and to cultivate compassion. This realization, while it may not be immediate, can be seen as the process of awakening to their Buddha nature. They're not becoming someone new. Rather, they are remembering what has always been there, the innate wisdom and compassion that are part of their true self. In essence, the concept of Buddha nature is about recognizing that enlightenment is not something that we need to strive for externally. It is already within us, waiting to be uncovered. Through mindfulness, meditation, and self-awareness, we can begin to see this truth more clearly. The process of awakening is not about changing who we are, but about recognizing and embodying our true nature. It is about shedding the illusions of ego and attachment and seeing the world as it truly is, full of potential, interconnectedness, and wisdom. This is the heart of the Buddhist path and the ultimate realization of our own Buddha nature. In the heart of a bustling Indian city, there was a street vendor who sold fruits from small cart. He was no different from many others in his community. His life was marked by long hours of hard work, limited opportunities for personal time, and a constant cycle of daily responsibilities. He wasn't someone who had the luxury to spend hours meditating, but did he have access to secluded places where he could engage in deep reflection? Yet, despite his lack of time or space for formal spiritual practices, this vendor was deeply connected to a form of mindfulness that many would struggle to achieve even in the quietest of meditation halls. This man's life was simple, but in its simplicity lay the potential for profound spiritual insight. Each day, he would wake up early, push his cart to the local market, and set up his small stall. He didn't have much, just an array of fruits neatly arranged for sale, but in the midst of the hustle and bustle, he practiced something that many would call channeling, or mindfulness. For him, mindfulness wasn't a separate practice confined to moments of stillness or special occasions. It was something woven into every action he took. Every morning, as he unpacked his fruits and arranged them meticulously, he would notice each detail: the bright reds and yellows of the apples, the sweet fragrance of ripe bananas, the way the sunlight glinted off the dew on the oranges. With each small act, he was fully present, paying attention to the sensations of his hands as they moved, the sound around him, and even the subtle interactions with the people who passed by his stall. While the world around him was busy, he remained focused on the present moment, not distracted by past regrets or future worries. This simple, everyday activity was his form of meditation. What made this vendor's mindfulness particularly powerful was the fact that he didn't approach it as a forced practice. He didn't need to block out distractions or retreat from the noise of the world in order to focus. He simply chose to be aware of what he was doing, no matter how mundane or repetitive it might seem. In this way, he embodied a profound principle of Buddhism. Mindfulness isn't about escaping the world, it's about being present in it. Imagine the vendor as he interacts with customers. A person walks up to the cart, perhaps distracted or in a hurry, wanting to grab a quick snack. The vendor, however, doesn't rush through the exchange. He looks them in the eye, smiles, and offers them the fruits with a genuine sense of care and attention. There is no hurry in his gestures, no impatience in his voice. His focus is on the person in front of him, the simple transaction, and the shared humanity in the moment. Even though the customer may be moving quickly through their day, the vendor remains steady, grounded in the present moment. It's not about perfection or an idealized practice. It's simply about being fully present with whatever is happening right now. In Buddhist terms, this is the essence of mindfulness, living in the moment with awareness, free from distraction. The vendor's practice might not be as formal as sitting on a cushion in silence for hours, but it is no less profound. He is not waiting for a future moment to be enlightened or for some external event to trigger his spiritual awakening. His practice is happening right here, right now, in the midst of his work, interactions, and life. The vendor's mindfulness also extends beyond his physical actions and interactions. He is acutely aware of his own thoughts and emotions as they arise throughout the day. If a difficult customer arrives, someone who argues over prices or complains about the quality of the fruit, the vendor does not respond with anger or frustration. Instead, he takes a deep breath, checks his own emotions, and responds with patience. This ability to observe his thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them is a critical aspect of mindfulness. The vendor isn't reacting mindlessly to the challenges he faces. He is aware of his emotional responses and can choose how to engage with the world from a place of calm, rather than out of habit or impulse. What makes this story so powerful is the recognition that mindfulness isn't something reserved for the privileged few who have time for spiritual retreats. It's not something you have to do in a specific location or under special conditions. Mindfulness is accessible to everyone in every moment if we simply choose to be present. The vendor didn't need to escape from his environment or his responsibilities to practice mindfulness. He brought awareness to his everyday tasks, and in doing so, he was able to cultivate peace and clarity in the midst of a busy world. In many ways, the vendor's approach to mindfulness offers a striking contrast to the more common view of meditation and spirituality in modern society. In the West, particularly, the idea of meditation often comes with certain expectations, an image of sitting cross-legged in a quiet room, free from all distractions, focusing solely on the breath. While this type of meditation certainly has its benefits, it can sometimes feel distant or unattainable for those who live in the midst of busy, stressful lives. The vendor's story challenges this view by showing that mindfulness is not something that needs to be compartmentalized into specific moments or locations. It is a way of being that can be practiced anywhere, anytime, and in any situation. In fact, the very nature of the vendor's life as a street seller, constantly interacting with people, handling money, and working in a noisy, crowded environment makes his mindfulness practice all the more impressive. He isn't in a serene, controlled environment where distractions are minimal. He is surrounded by noise, people, and constant activity, and yet he remains focused and present. This is the power of mindfulness. It allows us to remain grounded even in the chaos of life. The story of the street vendor also reminds us that we don't need extraordinary circumstances to cultivate mindfulness or to be present with ourselves and the world around us. While many people search for quiet moments to meditate or retreat from the world, the vendor shows us that we can practice mindfulness in the midst of our busiest, most chaotic moments. Whether we're working at a job, taking care of family, or simply going about our daily routines, we have countless opportunities to bring mindfulness into our lives. One might ask, but how do I begin? The answer is simple. Start small. Just as the vendor practices mindfulness in every action, whether it's arranging his fruit or serving a customer, so too can we bring mindfulness into the small details of our day. For example, when you're washing the dishes, instead of letting your mind wander, pay attention to the sensation of the warm water, the sound of the soap, and the feeling of the dish in your hands. When you're having a conversation with a friend or colleague, really listen to them. Don't just wait for your turn to speak, truly engage with what they are saying. These small acts of mindfulness can help us become more present and aware, transforming the mundane into an opportunity for spiritual growth. The vendor's story also emphasizes the importance of mindfulness in relationships. By being fully present with the people around us, whether they are customers, family members, or strangers, we are able to deepen our connection with them. We begin to see them as individuals, not as obstacles or inconveniences, and we approach our interactions with kindness and compassion. This is one of the greatest benefits of mindfulness. It helps us cultivate empathy and understanding, not just for others, but for ourselves as well. Through the vendor's example, we see that mindfulness doesn't require us to live in a monastery or take time away from our daily lives. It simply requires us to be present, aware, and engaged with the world around us. In doing so, we can transform our daily routines into a form of spiritual practice, just as the vendor did. His story serves as a reminder that the path to mindfulness and enlightenment doesn't have to be a distant goal, but can be found in the simplicity of our everyday lives. If we only choose to pay attention, the idea that meditation can be practiced in everyday activities is a concept that has been embraced by many spiritual teachers, especially within Buddhism. One of the most insightful teachings came from a famous Zen master who once said, "Everyone can meditate in their daily life." This simple yet profound statement emphasizes that meditation is not restricted to the formal practice of sitting on a cushion, closing the eyes, and focusing on the breath. Instead, it is a practice that can be integrated into every aspect of our lives, regardless of how mundane or routine our tasks may seem. The Zen master's teaching highlights a shift in perspective. Meditation is not something separate from life, but an intrinsic part of how we engage with the world. When we meditate, we are not merely practicing a technique to quiet the mind or focus our attention, but we are engaging in a way of living one that is rooted in mindfulness and awareness. Every moment, no matter how simple, can become an opportunity for meditation, provided we are mindful and present in it. Imagine, for a moment, the way you typically go about your daily activities. You may wake up, brush your teeth, have breakfast, go to work, meet people, and then return home all without a second thought about the underlying quality of presence you bring to these moments. These actions become automatic, mindless, driven by habit and routine. But the Zen master teaches that the key to living a meditative life is to bring mindfulness to everything we do, no matter how small the task. Whether we are brushing our teeth, walking down the street, or talking with a friend, each of these actions can be done with full awareness, transforming them into moments of meditation. Take, for instance, the act of drinking a cup of tea. For many of us, it's something we do on autopilot, hardly noticing the warmth of the cup in our hands or the flavor of the tea as it touches our lips. But the Zen master would suggest that instead of rushing through this simple activity, we could take a few moments to fully immerse ourselves in it. Feel the temperature of the cup, notice the steam rising from the tea, and pay attention to the taste as it fills your mouth. In that moment, the act of drinking tea becomes a form of meditation. It's not about striving for anything or achieving some particular state of mind, but simply being fully present in the moment. This concept of meditation in everyday activities is especially important in our modern, fast-paced world, where we often feel pressured to multitask and juggle numerous responsibilities. It's easy to become overwhelmed by the sheer volume of things we need to do, and as a result, we may lose touch with the present moment. Our minds are often scattered, racing from one task to another, without any real sense of awareness or connection to what we are doing. However, the Zen master's teachings remind us that mindfulness is available to us in every action, no matter how small. Consider a situation where you are walking through a crowded city street. Most people would simply rush from one place to the next, avoiding eye contact with others and lost in their own thoughts. But imagine if, instead of rushing, you decided to slow down and pay attention to the sensations of walking, the feel of your feet touching the ground, the movement of your body, and the sounds of the world around you. By bringing mindfulness to the simple act of walking, you transform it into a meditative experience. In this way, you can find moments of stillness and presence, even in the midst of a chaotic, fast-paced world. In fact, this concept of walking meditation is something that has been practiced for centuries in various Buddhist traditions. Walking meditation involves taking slow, deliberate steps while paying close attention to the sensation of walking, how the feet move, how the body shifts with each step, and how the mind remains centered on the present moment. It's a practice that allows us to cultivate mindfulness, not through stillness, but through movement. The Zen master's teachings on this point are clear. Meditation is not confined to sitting still on a cushion. It can be practiced in any activity as long as we are present and aware. Another example is the act of eating. How many of us rush through meals, distracted by our phones, conversations, or the countless tasks on our to-do lists? Eating becomes a mechanical process, something we do to fill our stomachs, rather than an opportunity to nourish ourselves both physically and mentally. The Zen master would teach that eating can be a form of meditation, too. Instead of rushing through a meal, we can take the time to savor each bite, paying attention to the taste, texture, and smell of the food. As we eat, we can notice the sensations in our body the way we feel before, during, and after the meal. This practice of mindful eating not only enhances our enjoyment of food, but also brings our awareness back to the present moment, making the simple act of eating a moment of reflection and meditation. The idea of meditation in daily activities can also be extended to our interactions with others. In conversations, how often do we listen with full attention, without the impulse to interrupt or think about what we're going to say next? More often than not, we're distracted by our own thoughts, concerns, and judgments. But true mindfulness in conversation involves listening deeply, without any agenda, simply being present for the other person. The Zen master's teaching would suggest that even a simple conversation can be a form of meditation when we listen with undivided attention and respond with thoughtfulness and compassion. By being fully present in our interactions, we not only deepen our connection with others, but we also cultivate a sense of mindfulness that carries us through the rest of our day. The beauty of this teaching is that it makes meditation accessible to everyone, regardless of their lifestyle or circumstances. Many people may feel that meditation is something they can't commit to, either because they think they don't have enough time or because they feel uncomfortable sitting still for long periods. However, the Zen master's advice reminds us that meditation is not about how long we sit or the specific posture we assume. It's about how we approach each moment of our lives. Meditation is about living with awareness, and that is something that can be practiced at any time, in any activity. One of the most profound aspects of the Zen master's teachings is that mindfulness is not about striving to achieve some distant goal or state of mind. It's not about trying to become more enlightened or more peaceful. Rather, it's about fully experiencing each moment as it is. Meditation in daily life is not about doing something special, but about noticing the specialness of every ordinary moment. By bringing mindfulness to our everyday activities, we can transform our routine actions into opportunities for spiritual practice. This approach to meditation can be especially helpful for those who may struggle with traditional forms of meditation, such as sitting still or quieting the mind. By incorporating mindfulness into everyday actions, we can begin to experience the benefits of meditation without needing to follow a rigid practice or schedule. The key is to approach each moment with an open mind and a willingness to engage fully with the present. The Zen master's teachings remind us that life itself is the greatest meditation. There's no need to separate ourselves from the world in order to cultivate mindfulness. Instead, we can bring mindfulness into everything we do. Whether we are washing dishes, driving to work, or simply taking a walk in nature, each of these moments can be a form of meditation when we choose to be present with them. In this way, meditation becomes not just an activity, but a way of living, a way of being that permeates every aspect of our existence. By following this path, we can discover a deeper sense of peace and clarity in our lives. Meditation in daily life allows us to be more connected to ourselves, to others, and to the world around us. It helps us cultivate a greater sense of awareness and appreciation for the present moment. And through this practice, we begin to realize that the true essence of meditation is not found in retreat or isolation, but in the active participation of life itself. Every moment is an opportunity to be fully present. And in that presence, we find peace, wisdom, and enlightenment. The teachings of the Buddha offer us a profound truth that often goes unnoticed in the hustle and bustle of modern life. Enlightenment, or Jiak-NGO, is not a far-off, mystical experience meant only for monks or ascetics. It is not a distant goal that requires years of rigid practice or extreme discipline to achieve. Rather, it is something that is already within each and every one of us, something that can be realized in the present moment in our everyday actions. The Buddha's secret, as he revealed to his followers, is that the path to enlightenment is not about finding something external or unattainable, but about recognizing the inherent Buddha nature within ourselves. This Buddha nature is not separate from us. It is not some lofty, abstract concept. It is a part of who we are, a deep-seated quality that resides within each of us, regardless of our circumstances, backgrounds, or life experiences. The journey to enlightenment is not about becoming something you are not, but about recognizing and awakening to the truth of who you already are. This is a powerful insight because it means that we do not need to seek enlightenment outside of ourselves. We don't need to look to gurus, scriptures, or distant monasteries for the answers. Instead, we simply need to open our eyes and see the potential for wisdom, compassion, and understanding that is already present in our own hearts and minds. One of the most liberating aspects of the Buddhist teachings is the realization that enlightenment is not reserved for a select few. It is available to everyone in every moment. You don't need to sit in meditation for hours each day or live a life of extreme austerity to realize your true nature. As we saw in the example of the street vendor or the teachings of the Zen master, mindfulness can be practiced in every action, no matter how small or mundane. The key is to approach each moment with awareness and presence, to be fully engaged in whatever you are doing, whether it is brushing your teeth, drinking a cup of tea, or having a conversation with a friend. Each of these moments, when approached with mindfulness, becomes an opportunity to connect with the Buddha nature within you. This is the essence of what the Buddha meant when he taught that enlightenment is not something that requires us to leave the world behind, but something that can be realized within the world. Too often, people view meditation and spiritual practice as a way to escape from the challenges and stresses of life. But the Buddha taught that it is precisely through engaging with life, through being present in every moment, that we come to understand the nature of existence. It is not by avoiding life's difficulties, but by fully experiencing them with awareness and compassion that we discover our true nature. The challenge, then, is not to find a special place or time for enlightenment, but to recognize that it can be found right here in the midst of our daily lives. The process of awakening to this truth is gradual, and it requires a shift in perspective. It is about learning to see the world through a lens of mindfulness and presence, where each action, no matter how trivial it may seem, is infused with meaning and clarity. This means that enlightenment is not a distant destination, but a path that unfolds with each step, with each action, with each breath. One of the best ways to begin integrating mindfulness into our daily lives is to start small. It doesn't require grand gestures or monumental changes in lifestyle. Simply paying attention to what is happening in the present moment, without distraction or judgment, is enough to begin the process. For example, you might start by focusing on your breath for a few minutes each day, or by bringing awareness to your body as you walk or eat. Gradually, you can expand this practice to include other activities, whether it's listening fully when someone speaks to you, noticing the sensations of your body when you sit down at your desk, or even feeling the texture of the clothes on your skin as you go about your day. The key is to approach each moment with openness and curiosity, rather than rushing through life or letting distractions take over. As you begin to practice mindfulness in your everyday life, you may begin to notice a shift in your perception. The simple tasks that once felt like chores may begin to feel more meaningful, more connected to the present moment. The relationships you have with others may become deeper, as you listen more attentively and respond more thoughtfully. You may also find that you become less reactive to stress or frustration, as mindfulness allows you to observe your emotions without being swept away by them. In this way, mindfulness is not just a technique for meditation, it is a way of being that brings peace, clarity, and understanding into every aspect of your life. Another powerful insight from the Buddhist teachings is that enlightenment is not about achieving a state of perfection. It is not about becoming flawless or free from all suffering. In fact, the Buddha never promised a life free from difficulty or pain. Instead, he taught that the path to enlightenment is about cultivating a deeper understanding of life as it truly is. This means accepting the impermanence of all things, understanding the interconnectedness of all beings, and recognizing that suffering is a natural part of existence. But rather than avoiding or resisting these aspects of life, mindfulness allows us to approach them with equanimity and acceptance. We learn to live with the ebb and flow of life without becoming overwhelmed by it. And in doing so, we come closer to understanding the true nature of our being. The Buddha's secret, then, is simple yet profound. It is not about doing something extraordinary or seeking some distant ideal. It is about realizing that the extraordinary is already within us, right here, right now. Every moment is an opportunity to awaken to the truth of our nature. Every action, no matter how small, can be infused with mindfulness and presence. This is the essence of enlightenment, the recognition that we are already whole, already enlightened, and that all we need to do is awaken to this truth. In closing, I encourage you to take this teaching into your own life. Experiment with mindfulness in your everyday actions, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. Pay attention to the simple things you do each day, whether it's brushing your teeth, cooking a meal, or simply sitting quietly. Notice the sensations in your body, the thoughts in your mind, and the emotions that arise. And remember, the path to enlightenment is not about achieving something in the future. It is about awakening to the present moment, right here, right now. So take a step forward today with full awareness and allow yourself to experience the truth of your Buddha nature. It's already there, waiting to be realized. As we've explored today, the Buddha's secret to enlightenment isn't about escaping the world, nor is it about waiting for some distant moment when you finally arrive. It's about realizing that the path to awakening is available to you in every moment, whether you're at work, enjoying a meal, or even just walking down the street. It's in the small, often overlooked moments that the Buddha nature is revealed. The truth is, enlightenment isn't some far-off dream that only a select few can achieve. It's already within you. And as we've seen, the way to discover it isn't through strict rituals or complicated practices, but through mindfulness, presence, and the simple act of being aware in everything you do. The power to live a peaceful, enlightened life is already in your hands. It just takes the willingness to see it. So, what can you do today to start living this way? How can you bring mindfulness to your daily routine, transforming even the simplest actions into moments of profound spiritual connection? I encourage you to start small. The next time you brush your teeth, take a deep breath and be fully present in that moment. The next time you eat, savor each bite as if it were your first. Remember, it's not about perfection, it's about awareness. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with those who might benefit from this message, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And if you're feeling extra generous and want to support us in making even more meaningful content, consider using the super thanks button below. Thank you for being here today. And remember, enlightenment isn't something far away. It's right here, right now, in the moments you create. Stay mindful, stay present, and let your Buddha nature shine through in everything you do. See you in the next video.